We are now going to implement one simple AI automation, but we are going to implement it 2 times. First, we're going to implement it with make.com. And then second, we're going to implement it with n8n. The AI automation we are going to build will produce short form narrated videos that you can use for marketing or informational purposes. You should be able to follow along for free, as all of the tools we'll be using are either freemium or have some sort of free trial. But in the case that you've already experimented with some or all of these tools, you might need to dish out some money or get creative with using alternate emails. Here is the complete list of platforms we will be combining in this walkthrough. In part A, we're going to be using make.com. If you're following along, the free tier should work. Airtable, if you're following along, the free tier should work as well. JSON2Video. JSON2Video comes with some free credits when you sign up, but afterwards will be about $50 for each subsequent batch of credits you'll need. And we're also going to be using ChatGPT and Pexels. ChatGPT has a free tier with limited messages, so use your messages wisely. And Pexels is a website that we can use to download stock photography. In part B, we're going to be using n8n. n8n comes with a 2-week free trial when you sign up, and afterwards will be $40 per month. Airtable, which we've previously explained, and JSON2Video, which we've previously explained. We're not going to need ChatGPT and Pexels for part B because we're going to reuse the outputs from part A and part B. We're going to be starting from scratch, so hopefully no questions are left unanswered. But if you have questions, leave a comment. And I've also linked a GitHub repo with all of the automations pre-made or pre-built, and you can use those to cut straight to the chase if you want to skip all the fluff. Let's go, honeys. For step 1 of part A, we are going to be creating an Airtable account. If you've ever used Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, then you're going to pick up Airtable super quick. At its heart, Airtable is nothing more than a fancy spreadsheet, or I should say, at least in the way that we're going to be using it today. Once you create an Airtable account, you should see something like this in your dashboard. The way that data is organized in Airtable is like so. First, you have your workspaces. Within your workspaces, you have your bases or databases. Within your bases, you have your tables, which are fancy spreadsheets. And then within your tables, you have records. Each row of each table is a record. That's where you store your data. Let's create a new workspace in our Airtable account. I'm going to call this workspace make or n8n. And then within this workspace, let's create a base. And when you're creating a fresh base, it gives you these 2 options, which is a bit confusing, but we'll click start from scratch. And this creates a base for us that we can rename here. I'll call this video automation. Let's rename the default table that was created for us. We're going to rename this table. We can do that by, I think, clicking this drop down. And then you see it has this option that says rename table. And we're going to call this script. You can call this stuff whatever you want, by the way. I'm just choosing names that are intuitive to me. So let's save that. And now that we have all that set up, let's populate this table with some records or some data. And this table has 5 columns, and we don't want these 5 columns. So these would be like the top row of your Google Sheet to give you some framework if you're familiar with Google Sheets. So here we can click this and edit this field. And the first field we're going to call order. And in most spreadsheets, you can store whatever type of data you want in each cell of your spreadsheet or your table. And in Airtable, you can restrict the type of value that's in each column. And depending on what you're trying to do, that can be useful or annoying. In our case, for what we're doing here, it's going to be useful. So let's go with a number for the order. And we do not want our numbers to have any decimal places. And we can leave all this stuff as it is. You can always change it later. Great. We're going to edit this second column. And this second column is going to be line. And we'll make this, we'll make it a single line text instead of a long text or multi-line text. As mentioned, we can always change this later. And we'll save that. And the final column that we're going to go with for now is going to be photo. And this will be a attachment or an attachment, excuse me. And let's save that. And we can edit all this stuff as mentioned. Let's delete this fourth column. And we could have renamed this one and kept it. But anyways, let's delete this column. And this is going to be the table structure that we're going to go with. So let's add each line of our script, right? So let me close this out. So you can type stuff in directly here. And then if you double click on a row, it might expand it, or excuse me, if you click this button here, it expands it. So you can edit the row of data in this modal. I'll keep it simple. We'll just edit it here. There we go. So this is going to be the first line of our script. And we'll say, I am healthy. And we're going to find a photo that accompanies this line of this script shortly. And then the second line of our script will be, I am wealthy. And we'll find a photo soon for this line of our script. And we'll say, I am gay. All right, here's where ChatGPT comes in. So if you have no sense of self-expression, no sense of personality, absolutely zero creativity, what you can do is come over to ChatGPT and prompt it to write a short form video script for you. So write a 3-line script for a video. You can copy each line into each row of this table, right? Now let's get some images to accompany each line of our script. You can get your images from Google Images, from a hard drive on your computer if you have some. You can come over to ChatGPT and prompt to generate some images. Hopefully this works. And then you can download your images like that. I, however, am going to be using Pexels. It's a royalty-free stock photo site. The nice thing about both the OpenAI image generation feature and Pexels is that they have APIs that you can leverage for scaling your AI video automation later if you want to produce a ton of videos. We're not going to cover that today, but just to give you some ideas. I've already found some photos that I'm going to use to accompany this script. And the way that we include them in our Airtable table is by dragging each photo onto the corresponding cell of the row. This attachment cell has this handy feature where you can drag files onto it. This feature right here is why I like using Airtable over Google Sheets for doing this type of work. Now that we have that set up, we can jump into our automation platform and tie all of this together to produce videos. Here we are in make.com, and let's come over to the scenarios page. And I've created a folder called make or n8n. And here's where I've been mucking around. Let's create a new scenario and start from scratch. In make.com lingo, a scenario is an automation. The first node we're going to add is going to be an Airtable node. So let's select the Airtable app. These are all of the modules within the Airtable app that we can choose. And we want this one because we want to pull in all of the records from that table that we created over here. So you're going to have to create a connection between make.com and Airtable. It's actually quite simple. You can click create a connection, and we're going to be doing this technique, Airtable token or key. And the way that we get that is we come back to our Airtable account. And then in this little drop down for our icon or profile, we can select Builder Hub. And then we want to come over to Personal Access Tokens. And then let's create a new token. This one will be called Make or n8n, call it whatever you want. And then these are the permissions that this token will grant to whoever is using it. So we're going to need 3 scopes or permissions. This one, and we need this one. Data.records:"read" is the first scope. Data.records:"write" is the second scope. Schema.basis:"read" is the third scope. After we select the scopes that we're going to need, we have to also specify what base within our Airtable account this token will have access to. And this is the one that we've been working in. Now we can click Create Token. Let's copy this into this field. And if this works, should be good to go. Voila. So you can see our base is available to be selected. And this table within our base is also available to be selected. And this stuff, I think we can keep as it is for this initial test. I'll click Save. And if I run the automation, you can see that we're getting our script into our scenario. Fantastic. The next node that we're going to add is a tools node. And to be specific, compose a string module. We're going to be looping over each row in our Airtable table. And let me fix this. This is going to be order. And this is going to be line. All right, so this is a JSON2Video scene. I mentioned we were going to be using JSON2Video. This is how you specify one scene of your video. A scene is hopefully self-explanatory. How would you describe a scene? A scene is a collection of multimedia assets stacked on top of each other. Anyways, hopefully this makes sense. We're building a scene according to the JSON2Video API. If you have any questions about JSON2Video, leave a comment. And I also have an amazing video on JSON2Video that you can check out on the channel if you want to learn the fundamentals of JSON2Video, etc. Let's move along. Let's click Save. And the next node that we're going to add is going to be a parse JSON module. What we're going to be doing here is converting the string that's produced by this node into structured JSON, or parsing it into a JSON object that make.com can work with. I'm going to click Save, and then let's run this. Okay, hold up. I'm leaving this in because this is actually very true to how make.com works. Sometimes you have to provide placeholder values before you can run the application, or the scenario rather. And then when you run the application, you'll then have the values you need available to you. So we built a JSON string in the second node or module. Now we can select it. We can click Save. And now when we run this again, it should work. And it does. And on the other side of this parse JSON module, we have for each row of our Airtable table, we have structured JSON, you see? Perfect. The next node that we're going to add is going to be an array aggregator. And that's found in the Flow Control app, array aggregator. And here you select the node that's producing quote unquote bundles. So each node in make.com has its particular behaviors. This one, for example, this search records node produces what are called bundles. And the system behind make.com is going to trigger the subsequent nodes once for each bundle by default. And the way that we can close that feature or collapse it back into one line of execution, I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but anyways, you can see by this icon that we're taking multiple bundles and then collapsing them into one. Anyways, when you're configuring the array aggregator here, you want to select the node that's producing these bundles. And here is what we'll select. And what we want to pick out for each bundle is going to be the comment and elements of the scene that's produced from the information from the Airtable table row in the bundle. A little bit of a mouthful, but anyways, click save. Now when we run this, hopefully it works. You can see these got executed 3 times in total. So this first Airtable node produced 3 bundles. This got executed once for the first row of the table, twice for the second row, 3 times for the third row. And then all of these executions, or I guess you could say bundles, got collapsed into a single bundle on the other side of this array aggregator node. And here we have an array of our scenes. Scene 1, scene 3. Oh yeah, this is expected because we're going to have to configure this like so. Let me show you what I mean. So we're going to sort by the order in ascending order. So if you remember, we added a column called order, and this is why we added this column, so that we can control the order of the lines. And now when we run this again, we should have our scenes in the expected order. Scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. Perfect. Let me click save. And then to wrap this up, let's add 2 more nodes. We're going to add a JSON transform to JSON module. And this is going to be the output of the array aggregator. And now that we have that as a JSON string, we can send it to JSON2Video using the create a movie from JSON module. And in the same way that we had to connect Airtable with make.com, we now have to connect JSON2Video with make.com. So if we come over to JSON2Video, then log in, come over to our dashboard. Here, there's a page called API keys. I will not show you this, but on this page, it'll give you some API keys. And then you can copy them into this field right here. And that should allow make.com to access your JSON2Video account. Bingo. And then what we're going to do is copy this string template. This is some more JSON2Video stuff. Pretty much what we're doing here is creating a movie. A movie is comprised of scenes, and we built our scenes in the previous node. Right? Well, we downloaded the rows from Airtable. We compiled each row into a valid JSON2Video scene. We put those scenes into an array. And then here's a string template for a movie.json. And we're replacing the value for the scenes key with the stringified array that we built in the prior nodes. Hopefully that makes sense. Pretty much we have scenes, and then if there's going to be some elements, like for example, a backing track, or maybe like a watermark or captions that you want to overlay over the spoken audio or the narrated audio, you can add a subtitles element. And here's where you customize the parameters of the subtitles element. I'm probably being a little bit too pedantic, excuse me. So anyways, save, And let's run this. That looked like it worked. If we come over to the render logs in our JSON2Video account, we can see something is rendering. And
I am healthy. I am wealthy. I am gay.
We'll leave it there for now. I just wanted to show you the basics of this Airtable plus make.com plus JSON2Video setup. You could take it to the next level by automating the script writing with, for example, the OpenAI API or the Anthropic API, whatever you prefer. And once you get the script back, you can break that script up into lines and then automatically add each line to the Airtable table. And then you could generate an image prompt, for example, based on each line of the script. And once you have the image prompt, you can send it to Midjourney or the OpenAI image generation API to automatically generate your images for you. You can also, once you have the image for each line of the script, send it to Kling, and Kling will generate a video for you based on that image. So there's a lot of creative direction you could go in. I'll leave it there for now. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And in part B, we're going to keep a lot of the same assets and setup, but we're going to switch out make.com for n8n. See you in part B. Here is n8n.io, and let's sign in and enter one of our workspaces. n8n has workspaces just like Airtable has workspaces, for example. And in our dashboard, you can organize your workflows into folders, just like you can on make.com. I made a folder called make or n8n because this video is pretty much an introduction to both of these platforms. So you can see a quick overview of the differences. And let's create a new workflow. So a workflow is an automation in n8n, the same way that a scenario is an automation in make.com. So here we are. And the first node that we're going to add is going to be a manual trigger. Running this node is the same thing as clicking the run button in make.com, right? You click this button, it triggers your automation. And the second node that we're going to add, you can search for all of the nodes here. We're going to add a Airtable node, and we're going to fetch the records from our script table. And let's create a new credential so you understand the process. It's very similar to make.com. You have to provide an access token and make sure that access token has these scopes or permissions associated with it. Here in Airtable, let's come over to the Builder Hub, which is accessible through this top right profile menu. And let's create a new token. Call this one make or n8n alt. The scopes that we're going to add are data.records:read, data.records:write, and then we're going to need schema.basis:read. The base that this token needs access to is the base where we have our script, which is the video automation base. And now we can create this token, copy it, and come back to n8n, paste it in here. And we'll call this token make or n8n, just so we can easily identify it. And we can see the connection is successful. And close this. And we see that the Airtable node is now using the token that we just created as its auth credential. And if we click this drop down, we can see the base is available for us to select. And if we click this drop down, we see the table within the base where we have our script is available to be selected as well. And to test it, we can click this button right here, and you can see we get our script. I am healthy. Yeah, 3 items. So it's showing one at a time. The same way that the make.com Airtable search records node spits out one bundle at a time, and it ends Airtable search records node is doing the same thing. Here we see one of the bundles or outputs So that's working. Next up, we want to build a scene for each row that we receive from our Airtable table. And the way that we're going to do that is with the edit fields node, or the set node as it's sometimes referred to. And we want to use this mode for the edit fields node, JSON mode. This allows us to very specifically outline whatever JSON we want. And we want to put this field here into expression mode, and then click this button, which gives us a little bit more room to work with. And we want to replace some of this stuff. Well, I'll just set it up so I can show you from scratch how this works. So this is the outline of a JSON object that is going to represent each scene in our video. We have to replace a few parts of this, or I should say, we want to set up some variables to replace certain parts of this JSON outline. Let me show you what I mean. So here we want to reference the image for each scene in our script table, or each row in our script table. Here we want to reference the line of the script in the current scene or row. And here we'll put the order of the scene, right? And on the right here, you can see the values that fill in these variables for each output generated by the Airtable search records node, right? Makes sense? So that looks good. And then next up, we're going to do something identical to what we did with the make.com scenario. We're going to use an aggregate node, which is going to collapse all of the bundles or outputs into a single line of execution. And the way that we do that is by selecting this option, and we'll rename this to be called scenes. And that looks good. Let's test this. And here you can see we have an array called scenes that contains 3 items. Each of the rows of our table got transformed into a scene, which is exactly what we wanted. And we can take this and send it to JSON2Video. But you can see here that there is no dedicated node in n8n for JSON2Video. So what we have to do instead is build a HTTP request ourselves for talking to the JSON2Video API. And this is the node that we want, the HTTP request node. And now we build our HTTP request. And let me show you a little trick for quickly doing this. What we can do is come over to this specific page on the JSON2Video docs that has an example curl request for how to create a very simple movie using the JSON2Video API. So we can copy this curl request. Curl, for those who are unfamiliar with this, is just a way of outlining the details of an HTTP request. So most of the data across the internet moves according to this protocol called HTTP. Sounds very fancy. All it is a way of transferring data across the internet. And it's pretty simple. You just have to provide the other point on the internet you'd like to talk to. That's your URL. And they have a verb here, which can be either get, post, put, delete. There's a few values here, but typically you're just going to see get and post. Get implies that you're downloading data from this other point on the internet that you specify with this URL. And posting data usually means you're going to be sending data. Usually that's how it works, but there are some weird exceptions where people don't follow the convention. And there's other features where you can provide headers, which are ways of specifying different things depending on what you're trying to do. That's very vague, but for example, you can pass a header that contains a password or some sort of auth token. And that's what we're going to be doing here. That's going to allow us to authenticate with the JSON2Video API from n8n. And you can send data, right? So excuse me if I'm being a bit pedantic, but for those who are brand new to this, you now understand what's going on. So let me copy this example curl request, come over to the HTTP request node, and you see this button here that says import curl. So what we can do is delete whatever value's in there, and then we can paste in this example curl, click import, and it's gonna set up a lot of the fields in this HTTP request node for us. We will have to configure a few of them to get it working just right, but it saves us some time. So that's a pretty handy feature. And what I'm going to do first is set up the authentication header. And after that, what we'll do is configure the movie.json, and then we should be able to test it out and hopefully have a video. All right, first let's set up the authentication header. So it imported a header here when we imported the curl. The reason why we don't want to put the header here is it's going to be public for people to read if we were to ever share this automation with anybody. So we can keep our headers private this way. So we can create a auth credential, and the authentication mechanism we'll use is a plain old HTTP header, which is simply a key value pair, right? And the key that we're going to use is, let's create a new credential here. Those are the other ones I've already created. All those are just key value pairs of API keys that I'm using for other APIs. So the name of this one that's relevant to JSON2Video will be X API key, and then the value will be found in our dashboard on the API keys page. I will not show you this. I will copy it and then paste it into that field in n8n, paste, save, and then we also should rename this so we know what this is in the future. Save, and that looks good. And the next thing to do is configure the movie.json, aka the body of this HTTP request. So let's switch this to expression mode, open this up so we have more space to work with. And this is the value that we're going to paste in here. And we labeled the output of the aggregate node scenes. So I think this is ready to go. This is almost identical. There might be something minor, like comment might be different, but this is pretty much the exact same movie.json that we used in the last node of the make.com scenario. So let's test this. And the request went through. That's good. So if we come over to our dashboard and check out the render logs, we see a video being rendered, but there's one thing that we missed. I think we forgot to sort the rows of the Airtable table. We need to sort by order ascending, right? And then now we can run the entire workflow. And then there should be another video rendering, right? And let's reload this. This should be finished and the order should be as expected.
I'm healthy. I'm wealthy. I'm gay.
Brazil, Brazil. So hopefully you enjoyed that. You learned a technique or two that you can use for your personal brand, or your company, or your business, or your clients' businesses. And sending lots of love, peace, and blessings.